Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Mike Collins joins us from Georgia. He held a seat open in honor of Laken Riley at the State of the Union. We'll talk to him about everything that's transpired this weekend as Joe Biden is now making apologies for her killer. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. Remember back to that ridiculous January 6th committee. They nationally televise all sorts of claims about Donald Trump and his activities on January 6th of 2021, meant to suggest that he was an insurrectionist looking to stay in power and to seize control of the government. It all doesn't make any sense. It's like a ridiculous conspiracy. These are like flat earthers, these people. Trump left on Inauguration Day of 2021. What kind of power grab was that? But they claim that he tried to seize power on January 6th. And they didn't want a single piece of information to come out that suggested otherwise, right? Which is why you never got to see the tape of him saying that he wanted people to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard at the Capitol. That's what he actually said at his rally. They never aired that at the January 6th committee, ever. In fact, they pretended like it didn't happen. They aired other portions of the speech, but not that. Not that. And then there was this cartoonish claim. It was made by a former aide to Mark Meadows, then the White House chief of staff. Her name is Cassidy Hutchinson, and she sat before the January 6th committee on national television and claimed that as Trump was leaving his rally, that he attempted to dive over the front seats of the vehicle that the Secret Service was carrying him in, grab the steering wheel, and forcibly drive the vehicle to the United States Capitol building. Do you remember this claim? Here's Cassidy Hutchinson making it way back when. Take a listen.
Very angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president. Take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Ornato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
And was Mr. Engel in the
Liz Cheney
room as Mr. Ornato told you this story?
He was.
Did Mr. Engel correct or disagree?
Yeah, okay. So there's the audio. That was the event, right? So she said he not only did he dive for the steering wheel, he was also choking people out in the car. Does that make sense to you? Not at all? Like that's what Donald Trump was doing? So here today is the update on this. Republicans, led by Barry Loudermilk, Congressman, have been investigating all of this. What happened with all the paperwork and video footage and testimony? Remember, they did tons of depositions. They would cap over the course of hours. They didn't release a lot of this. They didn't release it to the public. Why not? Why not just show us everything, right? Well, now we have our answer. New York Times headline today. Testimony fleshes out account of Trump's demand to go to Capitol on January 6th. Subheadline, much smaller text, but a newly released transcript of an interview of the Secret Service agent who drove Donald Trump's vehicle that day disputes that he tried to grab the steering wheel or lunged at another agent. Okay, so the headline on the piece is, oh, now we have more information about Trump's activities that day. Actually, no, the headline on the piece should be, the left lied. Trump never lunged for the steering wheel on January 6th. That's the actual piece. Here we go. President Donald J. Trump had just delivered his fiery speech at the Ellipse early on the afternoon of January 6, 2021, setting in motion the attack by his supporters on the Capitol. Even the first sentence is a lie. When he got into his armored vehicle after the speech, Mr. Trump immediately brought up a topic he had often broached after his public appearances. How big was the crowd? But within 30 seconds, his conversation with his lead Secret Service agent took a more contentious turn, according to a transcript released on Monday of an interview by House investigators of another Secret Service agent who was driving the car. Mr. Trump wanted to go to the Capitol, but his lead agent, Robert Engel, said no telling him there was no plan in place. Quote, the president was insistent on going to the Capitol, recounted the driver, whose name was not disclosed. Quote, it was clear to me he wanted to go to the Capitol. He was not screaming at Mr. Engel. He was not screaming at me. Certainly his voice was raised, but it did not seem to me that he was irate. Certainly not. Certainly didn't seem as irritated or agitated as he had been on the way to the ellipse. But, the driver said, Mr. Trump never lunged for the steering wheel or physically accosted the agents, contradicting one of the most sensational and hotly disputed elements of testimony given to the House January 6th committee by a White House aide. The transcript of the driver is the first extensive eyewitness account of what happened in the armored vehicle to be made public. Let me add here. Cassidy Hutchinson, to the extent that her testimony reflected anything, was supposedly hearsay. Remember, she said she heard it from other people that that's what happened in the car. She heard it from someone else. Well, it turns out the guy who was in the car, driving the car, said Trump never lunged for the steering wheel. Trump never choked out another agent. It's all crazy. Also, I get that the Secret Service might argue with the president a little bit, right? Doesn't that make sense? Like, where you're, well, sir, hey, we should be cautious about this. We didn't actually prepare that location for your arrival. There are a bunch of security preparations that go into your travel. But one would assume that if you're president of the United States, it's not even an assumption, it's true, you can tell them to do it anyway. I don't care. Do it. Do it. But I don't even really know what kind of fight Trump put up in the car here. I hope certainly that the Secret Service didn't tell him, no, we're refusing your lawful order. We're not doing that. Trump here says, they say Trump never lunged for the steering wheel, says the driver. Quote, I did not see him reach, the Secret Service driver told investigators for the House panel. He never grabbed the steering wheel. I didn't see him, lunge to try and get in front of the seat at all. What stood out was the irritation in his voice, more than his physical presence. The driver's transcript adds detail to one of the most scrutinized episodes of January 6th. The transcript was never released publicly by the House January 6th committee, says the New York Times, which entered into an agreement with the Secret Service regarding 12 interviews to avoid disclosing, quote, privacy information for official use only information, intelligence and law enforcement sensitive records, and raw intelligence information. This is garbage. Total garbage. What source or method would concealing this from the public possibly protect? There's not a single security procedure even laid out here. This is ridiculous that this was kept from the public. And you know why it was kept from the public? Because of the Democrats in the January 6th committee and because of the White House. If they had, that is the Biden White House, if they had an agreement with the January 6th committee to keep certain Secret Service interviews from going public, it was entirely a political decision. It was entirely political. And this only leads to more questions about what else is the Secret Service hiding, that is, at the direction of the Biden White House. What are they hiding from the public? That seems important, doesn't it? Especially given that, remember, Kamala Harris was in the vicinity of the DNC? Remember this whole pipe bomb fiasco with these things that didn't actually operate with an egg timer on them? The whole thing is deeply suspicious, and we still have all sorts of questions about well, wait a second, the Secret Service was supposed to scan that area. Why didn't they? Why don't we know anything about any of this? Well, the Secret Service has secrecy agreements, apparently, that they maintain with the January 6th committee. And it was only due to the diligent work of some Republicans who are now digging into this that we know any of this now. It's ridiculous. The driver told the January 6th committee, no, Trump never did anything like that. That's a lie. That detail was never released to the public until now. What month are we in? March 2024. Now you'll find out about it. Republicans have suggested that the panel did not release the transcript because it contradicts portions of a public account of the incident from a prominent witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who served as an aide to Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff at the time. Ms. Hutchinson testified in June of 2022 that she had heard about what happened from others, second or third hand. What a game of telephone that was. Republicans have faulted the panel's decision to promote her account of Mr. Trump's behavior in the vehicle. Well, no kidding. The New York Times should also fault the January 6th committee. It shouldn't just be Republicans. You have a direct eyewitness saying that never happened. And the New York Times frame on this is Republicans have said, you shouldn't have featured her testimony. A letter from Jonathan E. Meyer, the general counsel for the Department of Homeland Security, provided a reason that the driver's transcript had not been released. The House committee requested the department review the transcripts for sensitive information that should be protected from disclosure so that the remainder could become part of the, quote, historical record. More than a year after the driver was interviewed, in November of 2022, the agency was still reviewing the transcripts. Yeah, come on. How long does it take to read? How long? Yeah, unless maybe Karine Jean-Pierre was reviewing the transcripts. Maybe that was the holdup. Come on. Mr. Meyer wrote this to House Republicans in February. It took a while to review the transcripts. He said the agency determined it could release redacted versions of 6 interviews, including the drivers, to Republicans who are investigating the committee's work, while looking for irregularities or signs of bias. House Republicans released a copy of their report into the committee's work on Monday afternoon, pillorying the Department of Homeland Security for taking so long to release certain transcripts and criticizing instances in which Ms. Hutchinson changed or corrected her testimony. Quote, this firsthand testimony directly contradicts Cassidy Hutchinson's story and the former J6 Select Committee's narrative, said Representative Barry Loudermilk, the Georgia Republican who has been leading the House GOP effort to investigate the work of the January 6th committee for bias. Quote, although the Select Committee had this critical information, they still promoted Miss Hutchinson's third-hand version of events in their final report. So that took, how many paragraphs did that take? That was like 20 paragraphs before we got to the point of this whole story. But Barry Loudermilk is right. The January 6th committee concealed all relevant information from the American people. They hid the actual findings of their investigation from you because they wanted to use that entire charade to condemn Trump and anyone who would dare support him in the past or future. That was it. And you had people like, what do they call her? Looney Liz Cheney? What is Trump calling her these days? Is it Looney? It's something crazy. Whatever it is. Looney Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger were a part of this ridiculous charade. Ridiculous. And the Republicans that at the time Kevin McCarthy wanted on the committee to, bring some sensibility to this, Nancy Pelosi rejected them out of hand. That's why you couldn't have, if my memory serves correctly, it was Jim Jordan, Jim Banks, I think. There were a number of good people who could have been on this committee who would have been there ready and willing to share their actual findings. Sorry, Adam Schiff, you don't get to guide this. You don't get to guide this. We're going to release some details here that show that Adam Schiff is lying to you, and that wouldn't be the first time. Adam Schiff lies on a routine basis, and he did it again with this January 6th committee. So that's the latest today, and it comes out, of course, as always, these things always come out years after they're fundamentally useful. Oh, okay. Yeah, the January 6th committee was a big lie. Whoops. Sorry about that. Moving on. Adam Schiff, speaking of Adam Schiff, he was on television this weekend making the case that Donald Trump should not get any briefings from the intel community of any value. This follows John Brennan doing the same thing last week on MSNBC. I'll play the audio from these two guys in a moment. I want you to hear this. And by the way, there's an intel committee hearing going on today in the Senate. And I don't know if there's an answer to this. I haven't seen it yet. But has anybody asked any of the intel chiefs about Adam Schiff and John Brennan now saying that Donald Trump is going to get dishonest security briefings leading up to this election? Has anybody asked these intel chiefs about this? Kind of seems like an important topic. 5:20. Okay, so, you and I are both familiar with all of the intel community meddling in our elections. It unfortunately becomes more and more brazen. Adam Schiff was on Meet the Press this weekend and said, hey, since Trump is becoming the nominee, it's a sure thing at this point, the intel community should give him a dishonest briefing. They shouldn't tell him everything. Now, normally a presidential candidate would be entitled to a fulsome briefing. Adam Schiff says, not in Trump's case.
Ask you about this development this weekend. U.S. intelligence officials are planning to provide briefings for Donald Trump if he officially secures the nomination, despite the fact that he's facing 40 felony charges for his handling of classified documents. As the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, do you think it's appropriate for him to receive intelligence briefings?
Well, that is the practice, but we've never had a situation where one of the candidates for president has been so criminally negligent when it comes to handling, if not worse, when it comes to handling classified information.
He's being charged by the Biden administration.
So I have to hope, and knowing the intelligence community as I do, that they will dumb down the briefing for Donald Trump. I
love this. So Biden charges Trump with all sorts of crimes and then uses that as a basis to conceal what Trump is entitled to.
They will give him no more information than absolutely necessary, nothing that would reveal sources or methods.
Shouldn't they be giving a dumbed-down version of the intel briefing to Biden? Biden stole so many classified documents, we lost track of them all. He kept them next to his Corvette in his garage in Delaware, and then he told the American people, don't worry, they were safe because they were next to the Corvette. And I don't let anything near the Corvette.
Because we can't trust that he will do the right thing with that information. He's been so reckless. So, yes, it does concern me. It is part of a long tradition.
How many wars did Trump start, by the way? How many Americans has he gotten killed? Curious about that. John Brennan said the same thing, though, on NBC on Friday. It's a big NBC talking point.
I have to start with the news today with you, Director Brennan, that some version of our intelligence analysis will there's a plan for Trump to start getting.
Remember when they pretended Nicole Wallace was a Republican?
That while he's under criminal prosecution for mishandling classified documents. Will you explain what this is and what you think is likely to happen?
Yeah, Nicole, it's somewhat surreal that an individual who is under indictment for mishandling classified information is going to be getting classified intelligence briefings. But this traditionally...
John Brennan has lied to the American people and to Congress on a routine basis about spying on us.
...is provided to the candidates for president by the sitting president. And so therefore, I think it makes sense for the Biden administration to offer that to Donald Trump. Now, I'm pretty certain that my former intelligence colleagues will provide briefings that are not going to do any type of damage to sources and methods.
In other words, they'll be dishonest.
In terms of providing information to Donald Trump that
Ukraine good, Russia bad.
He could misuse. But they will
have Kamala Harris give the briefings if you're going to dumb them down that much.
Provide analytic overviews and briefings about some of the world's hotspots. Letting Donald Trump know what the assessments are at this point. So I think it's going to be analysis that will be devoid of the sources and methods, the sensitive things that we are most concerned about, the types of things that were in all those documents that he had in the bathroom and other areas in Mar-a-Lago. But I do think it makes sense. Now, it's a question about whether or not Donald Trump will accept the briefings. And I'm sure that if he does accept them, he probably will disparage them, as he has disparaged U.S. intelligence officers as well as U.S. intelligence itself for so long, over so many years.
By the way, through the miracle of technology, we've obtained a copy of one of Trump's forthcoming intelligence briefings.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
Wow. How deep. How insightful. Coming up on the program, Congressman Mike Collins from Georgia. Hey, good afternoon to you. 5:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. This weekend, Donald Trump in Rome, Georgia, had this to say.
But one of the lives that was taken from us was an incredible 22-year-old nursing student right here in Georgia, Laken Riley. Right? Look at the signs. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. From the time she was in the first grade, Laken's dream was to spend her life caring for others. And I met her beautiful mother and family backstage, sister, friends, some of her friends, a roommate. They said she was like the best. She was always the best.
Yeah, that's Donald Trump saying that in Rome, Georgia. Meanwhile, Joe Biden was on national television apologizing for calling her murderer an illegal, which he is.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal. when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley?
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country.
Yeah, illegals built this country. I'm not going to judge them, says Joe Biden. Congressman Mike Collins represents Georgia's 10th Congressional District. He was in attendance at that rally with Donald Trump in Rome, Georgia this weekend. Congressman, good to have you with us, sir.
Hey, man, appreciate you having me.
Tell me, first of all, your reaction to Joe Biden making excuses for Laken Riley's killer.
Well, let's see. First of all, we call her Lincoln instead of Laken. And then we turn around and we apologize to an illegal alien for calling him illegal when he crossed the border illegal. It's a sad state of affairs. And every time he opens his mouth, he's just digging his hole deeper. The American people see it. And Lord help, we can't wait for November to get here soon enough.
But he was wrong about her name, but he was correct in assessing that her killer was illegal. And he was asked about this on Friday. He said, well, that technically he's not supposed to be here. He said, what changed between then and now? Why is Biden apologizing now?
Well, I'm sure it's his far left-wing base, Nobody's illegal. Nobody came across illegal. That way they can, I guess, say that the border's secure. But, his base is getting to him. But I don't think that's going to help.
Yeah.
It's all about politics on their end. It's not about justice. But that's okay. We're going to get justice for Laken Riley in Georgia. I can guarantee you that because we got the death penalty there.
Congressman Mike Collins, is that what you expect for her killer, the death penalty?
Well, the DA down there, she doesn't really prosecute very many people, but she has recused herself. So we'll get somebody else in there. I fully anticipate this was a brutal murder, unprovoked, downright murder, and capital punishment's deserved in this case.
You, as I understand it, also met with Laken Riley's family. Can you tell us about that?
I did, and I've had the privilege of talking to them a couple of times, several times texting as well about letting them know as we progress through things throughout the past couple of weeks. And, man, Vince, it's just a tragedy. These people, they send their kids to Athens, Georgia, thinking it's a safe place, not knowing it's a sanctuary city. And look at what happened. It's just the worst thing imaginable that you can have as a parent. And naturally, they're upset. When we talked about the bill, the act, the Laken Riley Act that we put in Congress, they said, look, if it'll just save one family from ever having to go through this again, please, do what you can, put her name on it. We'd be glad to do that. And so we were honored and privileged, had the privilege to do that. And it passed the House. That thing went to sail through the House. I don't know if any legislation's gone through the House that fast or not, but sailed through the House and even picked up 37 Democrats to go with it.
Yes, and that legislation would do what, Congressman?
Well, it on our side, it did three things. First thing, it made notice to the Biden administration that due to the failure of their policies down on the border, they were directly related to the death of Laken Riley. It was their fault. And second thing it did, it gives law enforcement the ability to contact ICE when they pick somebody up. This guy got picked up 3 or 4 days earlier for shoplifting. So we just added theft into the list of criminal activity where you can call ICE, detain these people, and get them out of here, and let ICE deport them. And the third thing is, if they don't want to do that, then the state has the ability to go to federal court and get a federal judge to make sure that DHS knows what their job is, what they're supposed to do when people are harmed. So very good common sense bill. Yes. I don't understand why we only had 37 to go with us, but that's okay. That was a plenty. We've got some really good key people in the Senate picking this thing up.
Yes.
The Senate should pass this thing out. We ought to get it on the president's desk. We'll make sure that we write Laken in very large words so that he can read it.
I hope it does get there. But you're right about that. It is something that 37 Democrats supported this bill. But why did 170 of them oppose it? Why would they oppose an effort to hold illegal immigrants who commit additional crimes in our country accountable?
It's just the same reason, why they opposed the DUI one law the week before that. If an illegal gets pulled over for DUI, they're deported. It's just the left wing of this Democrat Party. Well, it's the whole Democrat Party. They have just moved so far left in socialistic society. I mean, did you take a look at it? This is just simple matter. There is a larger problem at issue here. And it's just the disdain for law, the disrespect for law and our law enforcement all across this country. You take, for instance, that mayor down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And I have been calling on him since this happened to resign because it is illegal in the state of Georgia to have a sanctuary city. But you know what? In his infinite wisdom, he decided he was going to pick and choose which law he abides by. And until we start prosecuting and holding people accountable and get back to a nation of laws, man, we're nothing. We're not going to have a country. And I can't for the life of me figure out why some of these people on the other side would vote against good common sense legislation to help our law enforcement enforce the law.
Yeah, well, they just don't believe in our borders. They don't believe we have any right to have them. I mean, this is why they're normalizing all of it. I mean, the language that they use, this idea that somebody could be, quote, undocumented, which itself is preposterous because the federal government knows that they had Laken Riley's murderer in custody and then released him. In other words, there are documents to demonstrate that, and yet they use lies like undocumented to talk about him.
This rascal you're right, he was down at the border, paroled, and then he went to New York. He got picked up there, arrested up there, and cited, and figured he probably better move his criminal trade south. So we picked him out another sanctuary city to go to and start his criminal trade over again. He and his brother both.
Congressman, last week at the State of the Union, you made the decision to leave open a seat that you would have otherwise given to a guest on behalf of Laken Riley. You said that you did that as a memorial to her and a reminder about her death in order to prevent things like that from happening again. In your conversations with Laken Riley's family, do you get the impression that they're overwhelmed by the response, or do they want to be a part of change in order to prevent other deaths like this from taking place?
Well, I think it's more appropriate for them to answer, a lot of things.
Yeah.
They did tell me that if we could do something to help prevent this from ever happening again, please do it. Please do it. That you can feel the hurt. These are just great people. These are just everyday Americans, and just never in their wildest dreams would anything this horrific have ever happened. I couldn't imagine what they go through, and that's what I don't even know what to say.
Yes.
But we did. I extended an invitation to them and told them, be glad to have them, but I understand, sometimes you're better off to be as close as you can to your family and to the good Lord at that time. So
yeah,
I know we left that chair open and we're proud to do that.
Yeah, it's got to be for so many people a paralyzing tragedy. But my guess is based on what we've been hearing about them that to the extent that they're in this fight, they want to try and prevent other deaths like their daughters. And God bless them.
I think that when they get ready, they'll make a lot of things known. I think just the fact that they were at the Trump rally on Saturday was really telling of a lot of things, And man, what a rally! Good gosh almighty.
Well, tell me about it, Congressman. Georgia, of course, is one of the most important states in the country when it comes to these presidential elections. How do you assess it right now in Georgia? How likely is it for Trump to capture that state?
I tell people all the time, we're not a purple state. We're a red state. We just got to play by the Democrat rules. And if you're going to have an election season, boy, you better be out there voting early. I mean early. And making sure that everybody gets out there and votes, because that's all it is. You can say it ain't ballot harvesting all you want, but that's what the Democrats are good at doing. They're out there signing up absentee ballots and making sure they're filled out the right way. and making sure that it turned in. So we just got to turn out. We turn out to vote, Donald Trump will win this thing. Because I've had the privilege of going to Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and then this event in my home state in Georgia. And man, I'm gonna tell you what, the lines you could feel the excitement in there. I was there in 2016, but this is different. This is big. And by the time we got to Georgia, I showed up at that rally at 1:30 for a 5:30 event, and it was packed out. You know, well over 4,000 people just in that small arena. I don't know how many outside. I mean, it's crazy. But people are excited. This is bigger than anything that we've seen. And I'll tell you, come November, the Republicans are going to have their say, and we're going to get our country back.
Yeah.
We're going to take it back.
From your lips to God's ears. Congressman Mike Collins, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it, sir. And we look forward to having you back again soon.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Of course. Be well. This Congressman Mike Collins, who was out there with Donald Trump on Saturday, Rome, Georgia. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has been hitting a couple of these swing states, trying to convince people to vote for him in his own way. And he had some doozies. I see some people claiming that the drugs have worn off from the State of the Union to the extent that he took any of those. He was out in Pennsylvania Friday night. And listen to this. And you tell me what he's saying here. Some people are saying that world leaders pull him aside and he says, quote, and they say to him, quote, "You can't win again." What? What did he say?
And I've gone now, I spent over almost 200 hours with the leaders of Europe, the heads of state. I know them all. I've known them well. And guess what? You know what every one of them says to me, virtually except Orban? I'm serious. As we leave these meetings, well, indirectly, they grab my arm and they pull me aside. I'm serious. They pull me aside and say, "You've got to, he can't win again."
Did he say you can't win again? I kind of hear a half blend into he can't win again. He can't win again. Anyway, not good to be unclear on that particular subject. Let's see here. Biden, same event. Is this the same event? Pennsylvania. He talks about July the 6th. Yeah, here he is.
Last night in the U.S. Capitol, the same building where our freedoms came under assault on July the 6th.
July the 6th, of course. Everyone talks about July the 6th. July the 6th. That's what the whole committee was called, the July the 6th committee. Biden asks the crowd to send him back to Congress.
In Pennsylvania, I have a message for
you. What are these things? Did they run out of the drug?
You. Send me to Congress that I can support this right.
Gosh.
And I promise you, if we take back Congress, we will restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land.
Send me to Congress, says Biden. The president is running for re-election. Let's see. Biden also said that he added more to the national debt than any president in his term in all of history. You ready? He's bragging about adding to the national debt. I don't think he meant to say this.
We cut the deficit. And we added more to the national debt than any president in his term in all of history.
Oh my gosh.
And under Donald Trump.
What is he saying? What does he even say? Well, anyway, it'll forever be a mystery, even to him. It's 5:51 now. Well, as the weeks barrel ahead towards the 2024 presidential election, expect Democrats to get even crazier. They're in the midst of a power panic right now, and among Democrat voters, 57% of them, according to a new Rasmussen survey, say they would oppose Congress certifying the 2024 election if Donald Trump wins it, according to Breitbart. In other words, Democrat voters want their party leaders to steal the 2024 election, according to this Rasmussen survey. The poll asked likely voters. Some Democrats in Congress have said that if Trump wins this year's election, they will vote against certifying the election results because of Trump's role in the January 6, 2021 Capitol riots. Do you support or oppose Democrats refusing to certify the election results if Trump wins? 57% of Democrats would oppose certification. 57% are telling their party leaders, steal it. Don't let the voters decide. That's the official position of the base of the Democrat Party, according to Rasmussen. This report brought to us today by Breitbart. They noticed this, and they said, that's crazy. We should tell our audience about it. And then I said, that's crazy. I should tell my audience about it. And here we are. Tell a friend. That's crazy. I should tell my friends about it. 57% of Democrats say they're ready to steal the 2024 election. Keep your head on a swivel. Coming up, the great one, Mark Levin on WMAL.